The mindset that keeps you poor. Folks, let's welcome Dr. Mike to the show.
It's like a shockwave in your brain that breaks down multiple doors as it spreads, and you're like, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. We have a fountain of infinity money? Like, yes, that is possible.
A
Like,
fountain of infinity money.
but
I
isn't that
like
crazy?
that.
That's what it is,
It is,
right?
yeah, great. Yeah. Alrighty, folks, this is an interview that I am so honored to have. You're going to see me smiling through this. This is somebody that I have been following for a particular set of content where he reviews Hollywood stars' workout routines. And if you haven't seen any of these, you've got to check him out. But I then saw him on Chris Williamson's show. The episode is called The Mindset That Keeps You Poor. And I was just blown away. Folks, let's welcome Dr. Mike to the show. How you doing, Dr. Mike?
Thank you for having me, Mike. It's Michael. Mike, how do you like to be called?
I usually go by Zuber because there's so many Michaels in the
There's
world.
too many Michaels. Zuber it is.
There you
Very,
go.
very nice to be on here. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it. Why don't you just kind of really quick introduce yourself to you guys? Who are you? What do you do? All of that. And then we'll get into the meat of the conversation.
Sure. Well, so I am a professor of exercise and sports science. I've been such a professor at various universities. I am a competitive bodybuilder and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu grappler. I co-own and co-founded Renaissance Periodization, which is, well, technically a software company now. We make a diet coach app and a training app, a hypertrophy training app. And we have a YouTube channel where and we have lots of books where we try to inform and educate the field about how to do things right in the realm of fitness and health, and ideally how not to do them wrong, which is where the Hollywood celebrities come in, mostly the wrong stuff. And so that's the deal. And I suppose pertinent to your viewers and stuff, the corporation that we're running has been, I would say, quite financially successful. And so I've accumulated some wealth and have some idea about how to direct that wealth to its maximum gain. But also, I'm a huge fan because it takes a lot of work to run a company like this and produce all this content. I'm a huge kind of almost lifetime fan of workflow, work organization, deep work, and also of mindset of how do I not trick my mind, but sort of maybe align my thoughts to make me the best combination of most happy and productive. Because there are ways to think sometimes that come by default to us that are not ideal for making us either happy or productive, but we kind of engage in them. Just a quick example, and something a little bit was mentioned of this in the Chris Williamson podcast you're referring to, is like a person at a job who's just rolling their eyes like, oh, another one of these orders came in. And it's like on a short-term analysis, like, I feel you, dude. Work sucks sometimes. And for real, forget all this crap. But on the other hand, if you think about it a little longer, especially from a perspective of I want to have the best time here on earth while I'm around and also produce the most wealth possible and also get the most fulfillment I can, your work attitude starts to be something that if you kind of look under the gift wrapping, there's a lot of details there that you can get correct. And some of this ends up sounding like way over exuberant Tony Robbins on steroids kind of nonsense of like, just love your job no matter how much your boss punches you in the face every day. And you're like, oh, really? Is this guy saying that? But if you look at it in its most kind of amenable light, it's really just a set of ways of thinking about work that are, number one, going to make you happier and more successful. And number two, and this is a lecture I just recorded for our RP YouTube channel, will be out in some number of months. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. It makes your approach to work more like a professional athlete's approach to their work, which is their sport. And there's 99 things you will see in pro practice. Very rarely will you see people eye rolling. Where very rarely will you see people on a basketball court practicing for the NBA not be almost fully engaged with what they're doing. Never will you see them being like, oh, I can't wait till the weekend gets here. They can't wait. They want to practice every hour of every single day. They used to have to drag Kobe Bryant out of practice. He didn't throw his elbows out of his sockets and all that kind of stuff. That's like when you start thinking, okay, why as a professional in my work and in my career, do I approach my work and career any differently than a pro athlete would approach their sport? You start to ask questions like that. Sometimes you may conclude, well, actually, no, that's stupid and completely different. Or you might come a little closer to the dark side here I'm representing, which is maybe you should be running your career a little bit more like a pro athlete runs their sport, which is to say, kind of maximum attempt at the best possible result, inside and out.
Yeah. This is something that I've just started to play with because, in the world of investing, there's a lot of kind of this social media kind of flavor that you got to be an entrepreneur, you got to be Gary V, you got to burn the boats, you got to quit your job. And I'm like, no,
Sure.
F that. For most of us, we should focus on being really good at our day job. And then, oh, by the way, on the side, have disposable income, a side hustle, whatever you want, because
Sure.
the fastest place, to wealth is using your day job as the seeds that become assets that become wealth. And oh, by the way, sorry to tell you this, folks, it takes a decade,
It
right? It's
takes a
not
little
freaking
while.
ramen noodles.
That'd be
Um,
sweet.
yeah, it would be sweet. But I think the day job, I do think people, instead of waking up going, I hate it already, go, you know what? I'm one day closer to being done. I'm gonna go do this thing right, and and just keep moving forward. What do you think?
It depends on also, I think that there's a lot of wisdom in there. It depends also on like what is your long-term play and where do you see your best returns on your investment? Because technically speaking, if we take a very grand view, every single work outlay that you have is investing. You are investing at a regular job. Let's say you work at McDonald's. You're investing an hour of your time and you get paid $15.
Right.
If you trade stocks for an hour, will you make more than $15? The answer is maybe. If you make predictably more and risk adjusted, you make more
Mhm.
trading stocks than working at McDonald's, then you probably can just go to being a full-time trader. Now, notice I said risk adjusted because
Right.
couple good days versus couple bad days, all of a sudden you're not beating your job at McDonald's.
Right.
So on the one hand, that's a very good argument for like just go and start investing right now full time because why the hell are you at your day job? On the other hand, a lot of times a day job is really tough to beat. One is the security perspective. Like, investing is up and down. It's not up to you. You're literally like putting your money behind other teams, other corporations. Sometimes they do well, sometimes they don't. It's not really up to you nearly as much.
Mhm.
But sometimes your career is going to have an ability to generate income for you steadily and at a very high volume relative to your return on time, such that it's a really good idea for you to continue to do your career. Let me give you a quick example from kind of like Lost in Space world and then come back to a more realistic thing. So Paris Hilton, do you know who that is?
Mhm. Of course.
She still apparently, or as of at least 2 years ago, was taking every DJ gig she was offered. You would think this is a businesswoman with 500 million plus in net
Yeah.
assets, from what I understand. Why would she take DJ gigs? This is ridiculous, right? Well, each gig is a weekend, and each gig gives her $1 million. That's her flat fee is $1 million per appearance, like net million.
Right.
And she said on an interview, she's like, I get like 20 of these gigs a year. So you guys think I'm just going to go look at 20 million and be like, nah? She's like, of
Yeah.
course I'm going to do it. Of course I'm going to take it. And it's kind of like, if you think about it, let's say it's a 24-hour investment of her time. Let's pretend that's what it is. It's less than that, but let's say flights and hotels and blah, 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 24 hours.
Sure.
$1 million for 24 hours of your time?
That's hard to beat.
Man, it's tough to beat. And you would say, like, that's her doing a day job. She
Yeah.
doesn't have to do a day job. She has like
Agree.
300 million under management in a portfolio somewhere. That's the day job. But like, it's a real good way to gas up your portfolio if your day job is putting in a crap load of money like that. Another way to look at it is for like my experience with Renaissance periodization. Depending on the year, in most not even such great years, we've managed to have a 20+% return on business, right? Like, where the hell am I going to? I don't have access to Rentec, like the medallion fund. I
Right.
can't get returns like that anywhere else. That sure shit can't in the stock market, not with
Yeah.
my expertise. If I did, I'd be working for BlackRock or something like that. Like I'd be at a quant fund, but I'm not. So for me, someone could be like, why do you still work at Renaissance Periodization in your day job? Well, you definitely have enough money to just only do investing. Like, this is my best investing
Right.
because my ROI is enormous. So I would say anytime you're looking at it as your job versus investing, try to get a column on each side of costs and benefits, upsides and downsides, and include in there just how much wealth you generate from both sources. And I think what ends up happening with many people is the first best way to generate wealth is just to have a really good career. Like if you look at a doctor, for example, who makes let's say $300,000 a year, and but for what he puts away for vacation and but for what he does for expenses, let's just keep it really simple and say he's taking 50% of his discretionary after payments income.
Right.
Half of that is going into regular real estate and super low risk, and the other half is going into index funds in the stock market, also super low risk. Like that person may be able to put $150,000 a year into such instruments. How the hell would you do that with investing alone? Where's your money coming from? You need
Yeah.
that seed fund for sure. Now, the conversation starts to look different after 5 years, after 10 years, after 15 or 20 years, where now you have serious money in the real estate thing. You have enough money in your real estate in order to take loans out against it and potentially take some higher risk abilities, buy a complex, buy an apartment, blah, blah, blah. Then the should I still be a doctor or should I full time go into real estate and housing is a conversation. But like you
Right.
said, for 5 or 10 years, your job is your mega fund into your investments. And once that flower has gotten big enough and bloomed, then you can start to think, okay, do I back up on the job? Do I do a little more of the housing thing? Do I do a bit more advanced market research for my stock portfolio? Then it's a conversation. But yeah, the whole Gary V quit your job immediately or 80 side hustles, it's like, I don't know, man. I think if you're well trained at a really good job,
Yeah.
you're going to make a lot of money in that job. And that's probably the best way to start out.
And that's what I want people to hear is I think there's just this social media slant, and it's because it sells well, it's sexy. Nobody wants a job, or very few want a job. It's just not
Right.
sexy to say. I work for the man, right? But I
Sure.
think for most people, they should if they sat down, they would realize, well, I got to pay the bills somehow, and the best way for me to do that is to become elite at my day job. And oh,
Yes.
by the way, also, then if that's going to be your commitment, I think you also have to have that secondary commitment not to spend everything you make, because unless you have discretionary income at the end of the day, the end of the month, you're not planting any seeds because it is to me, it is a 10-year journey. You got to sign up for 10 years to really see any meaningful wealth.
Jeez, that's such a good point. The whole not I have like certain limits in my head for the tolerability of various conversations until I'm like, I don't even need to be speaking to this person about this. To that end, if I have to convince you to spend less money so that you can invest more, you're just at some real fundamental level misunderstanding what it is we're talking about here. And
Yeah,
maybe for your viewers, maybe this is a little pedantic and simplistic, and then I apologize. But I would like to go on a little tiny monologue here for the
please.
sake of anyone watching this. Investing has something really, really magical that I think people need to understand. Now, when I'm genetically Jewish, that's obvious with my name, blah, blah, blah. And to me, I didn't even grow up like wanting this, but as I became an adult, my Judaism activated and I was like, oh, this is a real thing that I can have. And here's what I'm talking about. If you work a certain difficulty or duration or whatever in any given, let's say, month, and then a certain fraction of that wealth you put away into whatever vehicle you think is, let's just call it really conservative, because I like to start out investing. I think everyone should start out investing very conservative. You're like, let's put $100,000 on this one company. You're like, really? Like, what
Put
if
it
they
on
go out
black.
of
Put
business?
it on black.
Exactly. That's just casino nonsense, right? So index funds or really low risk real estate developments, things like that.
Sure.
When you put in some money into that every given month, all you need to do is run a projection of what is the amount of money that I'm likely to see from this investment in any given year in the future. So generally, I don't know how you like to do it, but what I like to do is I like to go on like anywhere between 2 and 5% of the investment. I like to assume that I'm not draining out the investment. Like if I take this much money out of these accounts in the future, what is the maximum amount that I can take out with the account still saying nominally the same amount? Like I have $1 million squared away. What does $1 million just pay me every year and then just leave it alone? Obviously, I like to do better than that. Obviously, like to still accumulate wealth. But that number, and like, let's call it, I don't know about optimistically, realistically, let's say 5%, right? That means if you have 1 million squared away somewhere, kind of, in some sense, very simplified, you have $50,000 a year coming to you in perpetuity, and it's never
Right.
going away. As soon as you realize the true, that's one of these things like, it's like a shockwave in your brain that breaks down multiple doors as it spreads, and you're like, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. We have a fountain of infinity money? Like, yes, that is possible.
A
Like,
fountain of infinity money.
but
I
isn't that
like
crazy?
that.
That's what it is,
It is,
right?
yeah, great, yeah.
Like I made a my wife and I made a quick calculation. We looked up just for shits and giggles. We don't do this often, but Taylor Swift's, because she's on the rise and everything. We looked up her fortune or whatever, and it was some gargantuan amount of money. And I don't remember the fortune was exactly, but we used that same kind of 3 to 5% formula. And I realized that in order for her to never get any more wealthy or any less wealthy, if she wanted to stay the same, she would have to spend $7 million every year. Like if you've been not so wealthy before, or if you've been quite wealthy, having to spend $7 million a year is actually a very difficult task, because you're
Yeah,
like, what costs that much money? Like you can be in a 5-star hotel every single night of the year and not even get close. And you're like, I don't,
yeah.
clothes, you can only buy so many. And all of a sudden it's like, holy crap, this is an unbelievable amount of money that just flows in. Now, that doesn't mean that all of us that's going to be realistic for. But someone who works their butts off for 20 years might be able to put 2 to 5 million under management. And that means you got 100K to 400K coming to you after that every single year for no money at all. It's just magical free money. And if you have no other aspirations than to just sit at home and collect your paycheck and just exist, you've solved one of the most quintessential problems of all of humanity. You have given yourself sustenance for the rest of your days automatically. Now,
Yeah.
that is such a you never have to work. You get in a car accident, doesn't matter. Someone in your family needs social support and you need to be at home all day with them, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You want to take a $50,000 vacation every year? You can. And no one can tell you it's bad practice, because you can literally afford it every single year. If that realization of that nest egg that you can build up that just continues to kind of siphon money your way isn't sufficiently motivating for you to start scrimping and saving and investing, Zuber, I got nothing for you, man. I don't know what to tell you at that point. You're like, really? You want to like look forward to your job when you're 57 years old and go, man, I'm making great money. If I lose this job, I'm in real serious shit within 6 months or 11
Yeah.
months or however many people plan for that sort of thing. A lot of people don't plan for contingencies at all. They just don't have any money around.
Yeah.
But if you work real tough while you're healthy, this is something my wife and I tell each other all the time. While we're strong, while we're young-ish, while we're healthy, we are going to, and while we have these opportunities, we're going to grind the shit into a pulp. Because
Right.
once we're in our 50s or 60s, we can always just be like, you know what? We're just done working forever and we don't care anymore. The ability, the gift to be able to do that, to me means like, if someone's like, well, does that mean I have to spend less? Yes, God damn it, it means you have to spend
Yeah.
less. What's
Yes.
wrong with you?
Smack.
Back, because you're going to be able to. Here's another quick analogy, like rappers and one-hit wonders and YouTube sensations, people that blow up really fast. Some of them make an unbelievable amount of money. Here's one. It's a little bit out of left field, but like there's people on OnlyFans, like female creators on OnlyFans, who make like $5 million a year on OnlyFans, and they're in their 20s and they're really hot and they're really sought after and they're relevant. And with biology and females and sexual attraction, you're only in your 20s for so long. You're still really hot in your 30s, and your 40s is a niche market. If you're on OnlyFans in your 50s, like either, hey, dope, like sexual liberation really got to you, or like you really don't enjoy what you're doing and you're desperate for money, you might not want to be in that camp. So my wife and I always like, if we find out some OnlyFans girl is making $5 million a year, the only thing we can think of is like, could we find her at a club doing bottle service, spending $6,000 an hour on the shit, and just shake her hard enough for her to be like, okay, I'm going to stop. I'm going to only do bottle service once a month, not every weekend. And I'm going to put $15,000 every month away into just real conservative investments, so that if/when my rap career, my OnlyFans, my hustle career, my really good job that I have, if that dries up, I have a forever amount of money that's going to
Yeah.
take care of me. Isn't that crazy to pass up? That's all I
Yeah.
got to say.
Well, I mean, you could talk about NBA athletes, professional athletes, the same thing,
Yes.
right? Their careers are 3, 4, 8 years in duration.
Yep.
That is enough seed capital
Oh my
to
God.
live forever, and to be it's generational wealth with the wages that they have today.
Yes, you can be rich forever. You can be rich
Forever.
forever. It is entirely possible for many people of what you would think is like not so impressive income levels to eventually get in the point where in their early 50s they can legitimately earn and continue to grow wealth with nothing,
Yeah.
no outlay, no work at all, and continue to be able to spend roughly $100,000 a year. Can you imagine that? I mean, think of it. Your
Uh,
home is paid off. Your cars are, whatever gas costs or whatever, groceries. Did you get to almost everyone can live on 60K a year, no problem. And then you got
yeah.
$40,000 a year to go on vacation. And someone's like, "Are you working?" It's like something that really blew me away because I'm from the former Soviet Union. Like, literally, my parents moved here when I was 7. We've been very poor in Russia, very difficult to say how poor,
Mm.
incredibly poor by Western standards, nonsensically. We were never rich here, and I only got rich, recently in my life. My parents are never rich. It's really tough because in movies in the past, I would say, there's rich people featured in movies, and they'll say things like, "Well, I'm not really working right now. I'm just taking it easy." And you're like, "What the hell?
Yeah.
How is that possible? Who feeds you?" And when you realize, like, if you were sufficiently well invested, you can just say completely insane things like that, and they're true. Like, "I just didn't feel like working this month." Don't
Yeah.
you want to be able to say that?
It's
Isn't that a real good
it's
thing?
it's really funny. So I'm 51.
Uh huh.
I started investing heavy at 30.
Ooh,
And
smart man.
as you and I know, I mean, we set this interview up when I was just starting a river cruise in Europe for a month. So
There
I
you
know
go.
exactly how that guy feels.
Right? I think, you can just do that. And a lot of times, the negative attitude is like, "Well, yeah, that's rich people, man. My boss tells me to do all this coding and then he gets off the phone, he's on his yacht." Like, well, there are absolutely ways in which wealth can be accumulated, not so nicely and immorally, but those are really quite rare. Most of the time, your boss that's really rich doesn't have to work anymore. His 20s and his 30s and his 40s are just like seeing red the
Yeah,
entire time, bleeding yourself into the ground to get these things off and get this money poured into these accounts.
that's what people
That's
don't
the
understand,
trade-off.
Mike, is people look at what we're doing now, and we've taken 2 month-long vacations this year because we can.
Mhm.
One in Asia, one in Europe. And that's all well and good. But nobody wanted our life for 15 years. We lived
Oh
so
God,
we
no.
we lived on half our income. We didn't do anything, right? I'm positive my friends made fun of me. Like, not only my friends, my family probably made fun of me. But
Sure.
all I gotta say is who's laughing now?
Right. You can laugh all the way to the bank and back because you own a significant fraction of the bank. Yeah, it's a big deal. And listen, like, obviously we have to say something here. We're not trying to value judge people. I mean, we can totally value judge, but like, look, if it's there are two equally compelling stories. One is, look, get it how you live. Just do what you do, make that money, spend that money. You're not young forever. You could die in a car accident tomorrow. Aliens could destroy the earth. Who cares? Totally. Then there's
Totally.
the other perspective of, like, you got to scrimp and save and invest so that later things are better than they are now for you. There is no most compelling of those. Now, for me personally, by far the second is the most compelling, but at least you have to, as a person who's considering investing, sit with that and sit with both ends of the spectrum and go, where
Sure.
am I on this? Because there's even a further left point of the spectrum where you spend money you don't have yet,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
credit card receipts and all this other crazy stuff. That you can go down that road if you like. There are absolutely upsides to it. You'll have some great experiences for 6 months until the credit card agencies realize they're not going to pay for those anymore.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's crazy. There's, of course, another way that potentially is crazy is if you take, like, okay, so for full transparency, I don't know if I should be saying this. Why not? It's not like I'm running from the IRS or anything. Currently, my wife and I probably siphon off uh, 80% of our income to investments.
Hmm.
80%.
Wow.
Absolutely. But like, we're not from money. And so the way we live relative to how much money we earn, we just wouldn't even understand where to begin spending them.
Right.
There's no
No
desire for
context.
us.
Yeah.
Right. Like they're like, okay, so I didn't grow up going to the club. I don't even know where the club is. I don't get
Yeah.
anything out of
There's
being
a
at the
club
club.
around here.
Right. Like with the club, what is that even? Who knows? Like we're not into fancy clothes. We have one car that we share. That's just
Wow.
us. Yeah.
Okay.
Because we just don't need another one. Like we work from home. We go to the store. We go out to eat a few times. You just don't need it. And
Okay.
she's Asian and I'm Jewish, so having things we don't need is like an allergy to both of our races. We're just like, oh
You're
my
allergic to
God.
that. Yeah.
That's right. Why is this here? So I'm not saying that our 80% investment rate is a good thing. It's a little extreme, but you could play with that in your head if you're considering investing and asking yourself, how much am I kicking my pleasure and financial security into the future? If
Right.
you're very future oriented, like you were for the last 20 years of your career, then it's so totally okay to invest most of what you earn because like this is going to kick back in a little bit and I'm just setting up such a great life for myself. It's going to be amazing. If you're thinking, yeah, I want to do that, but I also want to have some fun along the way, totally have a little bit more fun. Don't invest as much. Just know the trade off and be okay with it. And the only thing I'd have to say is, well, this biases me somewhat, but I might as well say it. The older you get and the longer you work for, the more you start wishing you would have invested more of your shit back in the day. What do
Yeah.
you think about that, Zuber? Is that
Ab Absolutely. Yeah, the older I get, I don't have I'm lucky enough to say I don't have many regrets in my life, but one of my biggest regrets is I didn't buy a fourplex when I was 20 years old. It would have
geez, same here.
fundamentally changed my
Right.
life. It's
And a lot of
pretty
I
wild.
would like to address this is stuff that people very rarely talk about. So I'd like to address something that I think people think is kind of like a showstopper argument against this, and I don't think
Mhm.
it is. Is people will say, like, okay, so let's say you're 89 and you have terminal cancer and you have 200 million under management. Okay, you you don't even you can't even claim that you're going to die. The idea of the guy that dies with the most toys wins. You don't even have toys.
Exactly.
Like an index fund is not a toy. You can't drive it around. Your neighbors aren't impressed when they see it.
Mhm.
Doesn't have four-wheel drive. So you did even worse. You are going to die with just money under management. Like, how terrible is that? On the one hand, yeah, for sure, that's weird, right? That's, how do you explain that to a regular person? It's super strange. On the other hand, if I got to investing sometime in my 30s, by the time I'm 89 years old and the nurse is like, oh, you're still awake today. That's nice. It
Let me
won't be
clean that
happening.
drool off. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. You can go into that great sleep that is ahead for all of us
Mhm.
without ever having to worry about money ever again from age 30 all the way to age 80. And so people say, like, well, you're just dying with 200 million. Yes. Yes. Let all the stereotypes about Jews sing. I want to die physically fucking clutching my money. God damn it. I'm totally kidding. That would be insane. I'd have to pull it out of the index and then it wouldn't generate any returns.
Yeah.
What a
No,
maddening
no,
idea.
why would you do
I,
that?
I just want to like to refresh my account to see how much I have, like right before I go. No, but on a serious note, like there is one thing that people forget money buys,
Mm,
and not always, many people remember this, but people forget it, I think, too often. And that is the psychological benefit of financial security.
mm.
And it sounds like the most lame thing anyone's ever going to say. That's something your dad says when you're 14, you get your first job. He's like, remember fiscal responsibility. And you're like, shut up, dad. I'm going to buy that outfit I like, go out with my
Yeah.
girlfriend's great. But financial security means you don't have to worry. You just don't. And that kind of, you never would think that's a thing until you experienced it. Here's an example. Like, you're at an airport and you're flying out. It's a layover flight, and,
Mhm.
the pilot comes on and says, hey guys, like, there's mechanical trouble, you'll have to spend the night here in this city, and like we'll have to fly out tomorrow. There's so many people that are freaked out about that. If you're a man of wealth and means, you could just be like, whatever, we'll get a nice hotel, we'll have a great time, we'll order room service, and then we'll just get on the plane tomorrow. And people are like, aren't you worried about what? Worried about what? You know how much fucking money I have back there? You know how just it doesn't matter to me what happens anymore because I'm essentially like, have immortalized myself with this money. That understanding that if it's rain or if it's shine, if it's cold or if it's warm, you have your finances for yourself and the people you love the most handled. That's a lot of benefit.
Yeah.
And that's something you want to pay money for because it feels so good. The idea, like I've been poor most of my life. The idea that you look into your wallet and you're like, I don't have any money, and that's a real thing. Well, that's a terrible feeling. You don't want that feeling anymore. You want the opposite feeling of it just doesn't matter. And the way you get there is diligent investing. It's gonna take some time. But I guess what I'm saying is it's a pretty neat thing to work to because as you get up to working to it and you check your accounts, you're like, okay, if I break a leg today, $43,000 a year on average is what I'm getting out of my accounts. Okay, hey, that's a start. You're not going to starve. That's it. You can't starve anymore. I mean, unless the whole global economy collapses, and then a lot more of us are starving. But, short of that, and then later you check it at 70K. You're like, I can live on 70K. And then later, 54, your day job you just hate, you just can't stand it anymore. You check your accounts, it's okay, like 5% return, you get $167,000 for the rest of your life. You're like, man, fuck that, I quit. I can live on 150K, I'm out. It's not that you want to quit,
Yeah.
it's the ability to say anytime you have the freedom to do that is such a huge deal.
I did that. I remember going to the office. So I was a sales guy in some enterprise software company.
Mm-hmm.
I just finished my fiscal year, went back to the office the next day, which is the first day of the new year, expecting a new product, new quota, new sales team, all this stuff that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I got things I didn't want.
Mm-hmm.
And in about a 20-second, I can still picture it. 20 seconds, I said, time to give me a package. I'm out. I quit. You give me a package, I'll say nice things, you say nice things, and I'm out. I was out at 45. I didn't expect
Wow.
to be. I expected to work till 50. And it was because of what you said is I knew I had put at that point 15 years of sacrifice, consistent piling. I never The other thing is I didn't grow our lifestyle, right? Because I always thought as we were putting the chips on the table, if I siphoned off a little bit, that was future growth.
Mm-hmm.
But when I got there and I had that, come to Jesus moment, I'm like, I'm out. I'm done. Called my wife. She didn't believe me. Picked up a couple pictures on the desk and drove home. I was out. I was done. It was crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, it's all due to trade-offs. It's down to trade-offs. But another thing I really like to maybe say to people who are in this position of like deciding how much they want to really scrimp and save and invest versus and how hard they want to work for how long of a time. Whatever it is, one of my colleagues at Renaissance Periodization, she's a coach, Dr. Melissa Davis. She's super great. And she's a neuroscientist by training, so she's an expert on the psychology of coaching. And I'm going to steal one of her little thought experiments she makes for dieting and for food and for cheating and eating not great foods. And I'm going to steal it and put it into personal finance. And her thing is if you're on a diet, let's say you're just finished a diet and your body's a little sensitive and it's going to regain a lot of weight if you just feed it cake and cookies, which is exactly what it wants to eat, you have to she has this little algorithm. And it's like rank your tasty foods that you're encountering on a 1 to 10 scale.
Okay.
Because you're after your diet and you're starving, you can just have healthy food and shut up about it and it'll make you not hungry. But you want to try everything because it's been 12 weeks since you've had normal people food and you just want, I want the Cheez-Its, I want the little oatmeal squares, I want it all. In your head, ask yourself, okay, so what's my long-term goal? Okay, not to regain weight. Okay, now that I know that, I'm going to set up a cutoff. It's a 7. Any
Mm.
food that I rate as a taste experience below a 7, I'm calculating it's just not worth it for me to screw up my diet over because it's not that good,
Mm.
right? Like, let's say you're starting to date a girl and things are pretty promising. No commitment yet. Like you haven't promised, like you're not dating, you're not, no one's exclusive. As a matter of fact, you're not exclusive. But you got a couple dates, you kind of have some momentum, and another girl hits you up and she's like, hey, like, do you want to do stuff? Do you want to hook up? And let's say like that's not that great. You've hooked up with her before, it was kind of awkward. You're not going to be like, yes. You're going to be like, I'm going to pass because I got something better working on. But if it's like the fantasy of your dreams, your high school crush DM'd you and she's like, hey, I want you. I've always wanted you. Here's me. She looks amazing. You're like, yeah, okay, it's worth it, right? It's worth it. This time it's worth it. Nothing is immoral. Then I'm going to make the switch here.
Okay.
Just the same way when you get to a place where your friends are hanging out after your diet and they're eating pizza. Is it good pizza? Do you really want a slice? If the answer is like, it would be fun to stuff the pizza into my face, but honestly, I've been to this place before and the pizza's not that good, don't do it. But look,
Right.
if it's a 9 out of 10 pizza, yes, it's time to treat yourself.
Right.
So all those analogies build up into this. How much do you use for discretionary personal entertainment income as you're building your wealth? And the answer to that is try to at least objectively, somewhere in your brain or on your notepad on your phone, delineate what you think is like, yes, this is a good use of my money right now, versus I'm just spending my money like other rich idiots do, and I'm going to miss the fuck out of this money later when it's
Right.
not around.
Right.
So, here's just a quick example. If you and your wife find a really awesome luxury cruise that you love the idea of, and you sit with yourself and you get it, actually, it is worth $20,000, then buy it. But if your friends are like, hey, do you guys want to go out to this restaurant with us? We're going tomorrow. Just give us a heads up. It's Michelin star ranked. You look at the restaurant, like, this isn't even food I like. And I've been to a few
Yeah.
Michelin star restaurants. There's never
Yeah.
enough food. It's always disappointment. Whatever. I'm not saying that's really the case, but let's say
Oh,
that's
it
the
is.
case with you.
I've been to them. I went out and got a hot dog and French fries after going to one. It was crazy.
Exactly. Okay, so we're exactly on the same page on that. But let's say that's your experience. Well, then don't say yes, because that's like $800 you could have just invested. So the way
Right.
my wife and I think about it is, luckily for us, we're very low maintenance people. The things we like best in this world are like sitting together, cuddling, and watching Netflix, which is essentially almost free. Thank God. But if we have other expensive things we like, we just have to make that calculation of, is this a 7 out of 10 experience or better? If yes, we're good with spending the money. What you don't want to look back on, and I think a lot of people do this, is even if they're productively investing, they look back 20 or 30 years later and they go, look at all this crap we bought.
Yeah.
Look at, like, we went to Fort Lauderdale to visit your parents and got the nicest hotel in Fort Lauderdale. Why? We didn't have to go on that trip. We could have gotten a not so nice hotel. Even the nice hotel was kind of blah. Don't just, a lot of people think once I'm making a certain amount of money, I got to spend money like rich people do,
Mhm.
And here's another one. You get a house, and a house is, technically speaking, a vehicle for investment as well. Let's say it's a nice house. What do you do with the landscaping? Because there's two ends of a spectrum. One is you hire a company or you do it yourself to do just minimum upkeep of a very nice, like, it's presentable. Your house doesn't look ugly compared to the neighborhood, but it's nothing outlandish. There's the other side where you're like $80,000 a year, so they can basically make a jungle and upkeep a fucking jungle. And there's tigers walking around. Apparently, they said it's all under control, right? So do you have to do that? And one of the things that my wife and I get shocked at is we watch the shows. I'm sure you've seen a few. I don't know. Hopefully, it wasn't the right thing. Unfortunately, I'm sure you've seen a few, like Real Housewives of
Oh yeah.
Atlanta, etc., Basketball Wives, that kind of stuff. Some of the folks there get into this culture where, as soon as they're in the rich people culture, all their friends are rich and they're rich, there's this keep up with the Joneses
Oh.
insanity, to where they're like, 15,000 square feet is not enough for our home. We've got a growing family. It's like, bitch, you got 2 kids. The hell are you talking about? And she's
Yeah.
like, right. We need a house with 25,000 square feet. And honestly, not having an indoor pool at this point is not a cool thing for us. It's like, think about if you're really getting what you need out of this versus putting that money, and so much money, to the future, to, if you ever compelled to get a 25,000 square foot home later, hey, shit, you'll have way more than enough money for it. It just, don't let that, oh, I'm a wealthy person now, I've got all this income, let's find out how to spend it. Don't let that hit you.
Yeah.
Just get what you need. And if you really don't find a compelling reason to buy something expensive, don't do it. You will thank yourself a millionfold later on.
I've got a question that I was hoping to ask, and I'm going to ask it here because I think you're the only person I've ever spoken to that really can talk about both sides. I think, and again, tell me if I'm wrong, that getting physically fit and getting wealthy are extremely similar activities and relatively easy, but most people don't do them. What do you think of that?
Agreed on all accounts.
Really? Oh, I was
Yeah.
unsure.
No, totally. It's a similar thing where you do things that are not extreme with a set of dependable principles, and you do them consistently, and it adds
Consistently.
up over time, adds up over time, adds up over time. And then you look 10 years later, you're in your 50s and you look like you're in your 30s, and everyone's like, what are you doing, Frank? How come you look so great? It is no magic answer. I've just been lifting weights for half a generation, 4 times a week, been watching my diet, and this is
Right.
how I look. Just the same way when you talk to someone who's, like has been a dentist for 20 years, and you're like, oh, dentistry, it's a tough job. He's like, yeah, like I'm thinking of leaving the practice. And you're like, oh, you got another practice? Like, no, I'm just going to retire. And they're like, how? And it's like, well, like, dentists make a good amount of money, and I've just been siphoning off some amount of it every year. And after 20 years, that's a lot of money. So a lot of times working for fitness, people expect these big results right away.
Yeah.
They expect it to be glorious, and it's not. It's short term effort every couple days, every day, every little bit here, and
Yep.
it adds up. There's no glory until you're 54 and the 20-year-old kids in the back on your bus ride into Cancun are asking you for tips about abs, and everyone's like, whoa, really?
Yeah.
Like, and then
Yeah.
I know there's this thing where when you're in shape and you're older, other people that are older and are not in shape have this like incredulousness when they look at you. They think it's some magical stuff
Yeah.
that you must have done. What's the secret? Is it the organic foods? Is it this weird weightlifting philosophy? And the secret has really just been 10 years of
Yeah. 10
consistency,
years. Exactly.
training pretty hard, but not trying to kill yourself. And voila, just the same way with most wealth building, that's some crazy thing you stumbled upon, digging in your backyard and boom, oil comes out. It's a matter of just allocating your resources intelligently for years and years. A lot of it takes the same kind of discipline, the same kind of foresight, and the same kind of commitment to boring fundamentals. And also in fitness, there's this other thing where there's a new workout approach every month, every 6 months that everyone's talking about.
Sure.
And it's so easy to just flip the script and go to that, but you really just should be sticking to the basics. And I don't have to tell you that in finance and investing, oh my God, and a lot of the
Yeah.
shows, like, what is it, like Mad Money or whatever, stuff
Hmm.
like that. Like, if that guy knew anything, he would just be investing and shutting the hell up about it and getting crazy year on year returns. It turns out it's just
Right.
supposed to be entertaining you. And so there's always like, people will say things to me like, what are you doing with Tesla stock? Have you seen Tesla stock? But believe it or not, I do not pay attention to Tesla day to day or even week to week because I hold some Tesla stock. I think it's smart. I think it's a great company, but I hold a stock in like about a million other companies. I just don't care. I'm not jumping on that hot new thing unless it's
Right.
very compelling. Like if there's a decent fund out there that does AI or especially like hardware for AI, is like computing hardware is a zero loss industry.
Right.
The next 10 years, if you have a story about how the world evolves in which computing hardware is not valuable, I'd sure like to hear it.
Yeah.
There's a
We,
deficit of
we we need
computer
lots of
chips.
shovels. That's where the
Can you
hardware is. A
imagine,
bunch of
right?
shovels. Yeah.
Exactly. So outside of things like that, which really take a few months or years to come up until they're sure things,
Oh,
and then
for
you pour
sure.
into them, you don't want to be hop skipping from investment strategy to strategy, thinking, oh, this is the new thing. And same thing with fitness, and people are promising
Yeah.
you quick results, quick schemes. That also fails. Same way in
So
fitness.
funny. Yeah. It's really funny because the principles of investing and fitness are very similar. And I didn't know if you would agree or not. So that
Oh
was really
yeah,
cool.
totally.
The other thing, at least in finance, I don't know if this is similar in fitness, but in the finance and investing world, there's this. I think I put this in my note to you. There's this notion of doomers. They look at everything and it's always doom, 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 doom. And now some of them are just profiteers. They make porn and it's called doom because we want to run away from the tiger, right? So our
Sure,
brains do that.
of course.
But what do you think of, just the general notion of doomers?
I have a few things to say about the general notion of doomer. One is if you really do believe you have some kind of insight on when the doom is coming, you have an ability to make an unbelievable amount of wealth if you properly time your short selling. But almost no one does that because they're really, just as you say, in the pornography business in some extent, and they don't know when it's coming. And if they took short positions as often as they thought it was coming, they would just lose all their money really
They'd
fast.
be busted. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, philosophically, I'm a really big fan of Peter Schiff. Do you know who Peter Schiff
Oh, of
is?
course. Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
Philosophically, he's great, says all the right things about capitalism, et cetera. I love that. But he's a doomer, if you think about it in
Oh,
a
no,
technical
he's
sense.
gold is always the answer. It's
Right. And it's like, if,
nothing is always the
right.
answer.
And if you actually listen to his advice, you would have not so much money.
No, not much.
because he's saying that the bottom is flying out from underneath us every dependably 2 to 5 years. He says that,
Right.
and it only happens every 15 to 20 years, and then after 2 of those years it fixes itself. One of the things to me that was really crazy when people, the 2007 2008 financial crisis, I was a master's student at the time, and I honestly, like, I was like, wow, financial crisis means something different in America in the modern age, because like there's no one whose food security has been
Yeah.
messed with. No one's out of a place to live. And a couple of years later, I was training people in New York, and they were like, they had the biggest fortunes they ever had. 2010, they were all back up to where they
Yeah.
were. And it was like, okay,
Hello.
this is a very different understanding of crisis. Like a financial, what is the difference between a crisis and a dip? I don't know. There's no real, it's just all words as far as
Yeah.
definitions are concerned. So, yeah, the doomerism is, if you really were a doomer and you really had it figured out, you would just be short selling and making a killing. But you don't. So let's move on to the next thing. You are anxious and scared of the fact that wealth on a societal level will recede. And that's okay to be anxious and scared, but you also have to ask yourself, is this really the highest chance of occurrence? What is my best bet of what's going to happen? Now, if you look at all market performance, all investing performance through all of history, it looks like this egregious exponential curve into infinity. And you're like, okay, so clearly on the grand scheme, doomerism is just wrong. It's really terrible financial advice, because if you just invest in the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones, you just 20 years later, you don't ever look at it. 20 years later, you open it up, there's a chance that it's going to be much, much higher. And the longer you wait, the near certainty that it's going to be way, way, way higher. So doomerism from that perspective goes straight to hell. There is a subtype of doomerism, which is a little more interesting: industry and technology specific doomerism.
Mm.
Imagine someone at a typewriter corporation in 1982 saying, guys, this, we're circling the drain here. There's not left, there's anything left. You could say, oh, what a doomer. That person's right. But the thing is, you can't just be a doomer and say this industry is going, because how is the economy overall exploding with just one industry sinking? Well, other industries have to be going up. So you can be a doomer and say, well, this industry is going down the drain, but I think this other industry is just going to blow up or is blowing up. That industry has to get siphoned off somehow. What killed the typewriter wasn't the fact that it became a bad technology. It was always great. It was getting better. The best typewriters in the world were made in the last days of the typewriter. Things were just getting better the whole time. The computer replaced them. Now, can you imagine telling a story to shareholders and be like, guys, the typewriter industry is going away, like 1983 or something?
Right.
And they're like, are there any other industries I should invest in? You're like, honestly, it's bleak times. No. Someone would shake the crap out of you on the stage, be like, invest in everything tech that you possibly can, and you'd be a fucking trillionaire by 2015. This is,
Right.
can you imagine? There was a guy, my wife and I were watching this thing called like 80s video dating. It's ridiculous videotapes of people trying to be like, hello, my name is John, and I like girlfriend. It's really awkward. One of the guys, this was filmed in the late 80s, and he's super nerd. He's like, my name's whatever. And he's like, and I'm interested in every facet of data processing. And I was like, there's guaranteed that guy's $50 million net worth by now. Because if you were
Yeah,
doing that shit
exactly.
in the late 80s, oh my God, you're like the first guy on the floor at Cisco. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like all these
Yeah. Yeah.
companies, like no one knew what data was. It's like guys today being like, oh, I work for a company called Microsoft or OpenAI. You'd be like, oh my God, you're in the best place
Yeah.
possible. So early Google, that kind of thing. So doomerism can be industry specific, but
Sure.
again, for good reasons, not just like, oh, I don't know. And then a lot of people get another thing wrong. They think that really crazy revolutionary breakthroughs are somehow a net negative. So people will talk
Mm.
about AI as
Yeah.
being like, AI is going to put us all out of work. I think just most people just don't know enough basic economics to understand how that would happen. And the story they tell is just wrong. Like if you were in an Econ
Yep.
101 class, that would be
Agreed.
wrong. And another way to think about it is just the positives. Like if you're scared of AI, please understand that, let's say we have human level intelligence, but it's available cloned as many times as you want through like GPT, chat GPT. Let's say it's human grade intelligence. You can do anything a human can.
Okay.
How much does it cost to operate? I don't know, like 20 cents a day. Like you just got human labor for 20 cents a day. Like, okay, what project did you want to work on at your company? Before you answer me, don't, because the answer is any project you want. We
Yeah,
have
the
now
answer is
empowered,
all of them.
at the same time, we have now
Yeah.
empowered every small business to expand in essentially almost any way that it wants to. Holy crap, this is bigger than the internet. This is bigger than electricity. This is the most wealth creating thing of all time. How can you be a doomsayer about this? And so it all comes back to this. Most people that are doomsayers, first of all, I just wouldn't use their financial advice on anything, because unless they're incredibly well timed, they're going to cost you money. People saying
Oh,
like, "Oh, I pull back from stocks and get into gold for the next couple of years." You're like, "Oh, really? How many years? Why?
yeah.
Where is this proximate event that's going to occur? How much of your money are you willing to bet that it's going to occur? What about offsetting variables? Like, yeah, there could be a war with China, and in the same month, smarter than human intelligence just discovered, and we just keep going up and to the right. Like, oh, guess that didn't matter. I mean, imagine if during a war with Germany in 1939, 1941, etc., you like pulled out all of your stocks and went to gold. It'd be the stupidest thing you could ever done in your entire life. American companies don't go out of business; they just cranked like crazy. And then the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, you would have made a fucking $1 trillion. So again, the case for doomerism, to me, I'll sum it up as simply as this: it comes from a feeling that evolution has given us, which is because we were normally very underpowered compared to our environment and evolution, and things relatively often went quite bad for us. The base level of things going bad that our brain is expecting is quite high. It's like a soldier who's been in war and has PTSD. They're expecting explosions to be heard, and if they don't, they feel quite not good, because they're anxious for no reason. That's what we're like, all of us, I think, all humans pretty much, with doomerism. We expect things to go bad because, look, if you zoom back 1,000 years ago, the shit was terrible. There was no internal plumbing. Everyone died randomly of diseases all around. Warfare was constant. Crime was insane. Cleanliness wasn't a concept that could even be codified. Like, oh, does this germ, does it have germs here? Like, what the hell is a germ? Like, oh my god, we're really in the dark ages. That's how humans evolved. When you put humans to the current world, in which on average everything just gets exponentially better all the time, a lot of them can't. It's like the Matrix. They can't quite, something's not working. I have to pretend. My mind starts telling me these stories about like bad stuff's going to happen. Why?
Mhm.
Because I feel like it is. I would just say, take a step back if you're in that situation and be like, what is the realistic probability that bad things happen versus good things happen? If you can tell yourself a compelling story that bad things are coming, yes, financially prepare for them. But you probably can't. And then you should probably just be like, you know what? I know this is crazy to say, but I'm betting things continue to get better on average. And did you know when that bet would have been accurate? 1960, 1970, 1980, 1990, 2000, 2010, 2020. It's always.
Always.
There is not a, through the Great Depression. The number one thing to do in the Great Depression would have been sell none of your stocks. Do not get out of the market at all. As a matter of fact, scrimp and save to put more money while the stocks are low. Can you imagine if you just buttressed your stocks like crazy in the
Mm.
1920s? By the time the 40s boom happened, you'd be like, and I retire.
There you
So
go.
if another thing is, one thing really quick for doomerism, if you're investing into general real estate, and let's forget about real estate, it's a little more complicated, just overall market, like index funds, S&P, Dow,
Sure.
etc. If you're telling me as a doomer, listen, don't go long on these things, what else are you telling me about the fate of the world? What
Yeah.
is the world like if the Dow and S&P go 30 years without recovering their initial value? What happened to our society? I mean, something systemic must have really broken something. World wars don't even do this kind of stuff. They
Right.
don't. Great depressions don't last that long. So what is it that you're telling me is coming, and how are you so sure that that's coming? And when has this happened before? And they'd be like, well, never. So you're telling me we have to prepare for a cataclysmic event. And do I even give a shit about my personal wealth? Like, if there's a tidal wave that a comet struck and it's covering half the East Coast in water, do I even care that I'm a millionaire anymore? I just want to survive. And I might not even want to survive. I don't even want to live in that world. I don't want to live in a post apocalyptic zombie world. So if I have to prepare for it financially, there's a story which I don't have to prepare for at all. Fuck it. I'm just living the high life until a comet hits or some shit like that. So anytime people have real doomer takes, I always want them to be like, okay, think a little further ahead. Do you really think that world is coming? And if you really do, why are you so calm about it? One of the things that was really crazy to see in real life was there was a video of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez like peeling chestnuts over a fire or something like that a few years back, and she was talking in just insanely calm terms, like super cool, like little like story hour while she was peeling chestnuts. How the the world's ecosystem was going to basically die in 2030. And we basically only had like 10 years or 15 years at the time to live. And it was just all going to die. It's like, I can tell you don't really believe that because you're in a fire peeling. Shouldn't you be doing something crazy like
Yeah, yeah, I'm
preparing the
going
world
batshit
for
crazy. Yeah,
total
exactly.
restructuring or just going out there and just living life like a Viking, just stealing and raping and killing? Who cares? The world's coming to an end, right? Or if you're religious, just reading a religious text and praying all day, you think the end is coming. But of course, she didn't think that. It was performative. It was just, some people just don't connect the dots. So when some people say, like, yeah, man, I don't know about this economy, I think AI is going to kill us all, like, you don't really think that. If you
Yeah.
really thought that, you would be doing some way different stuff. And the good news is you don't have to think it, because generally the progress in our society is consistent. It's not always, but it's generally consistent and exponential. And if you understand that, when people say doom stuff, you can say, look, there's a probability that doom stuff will happen. Absolutely. I assess two things. One, that probability is low. And second, even if it's high, well, what am I supposed to do to prepare for doom? I'm just a human being. I can't do anything about it. What am I supposed to do about the comet hitting the Earth? I'm going to pretend like shit's going to go well, and I'm going to invest in that idea. And if stuff goes poorly, I'll be the guy trying to save myself from zombies. And you'll be like, hey, how's that 50 million in the bank doing now? And I'd be like, how's anything for you doing now? You didn't save any money. I did. We're both still stabbing zombies with sticks. We both lost. Whereas if
Exactly.
I bet on the right stuff and you bet on doomerism, you say, well, I didn't save any money because I was always ready for the zombies. But 30 years later, there's no zombies. And I have 50 million, you have nothing. Like, if it goes poorly for us, it's going bad for you as well. I think that's what people forget about doomerism. People say, like, well, AI is going to kill us all. Well, if that's really true, we're not going to have anything to say about it. AI is going to be so much better at us than fighting. Then this doesn't matter. So I would say live your life as if good things are coming, for two reasons. One, because they probably are. And two, if really bad things are coming, the kind that can disrupt the entire stock market for a generation, you're not going to have an ability to leverage them anyway. And then what
Dr.
are you going to
Mike,
do?
multiple layers. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you. Where can my audience look you up and follow you?
Gee whiz. So I have a philosophy channel called Making Progress with Mike Israetel. That's the interesting find on YouTube, where I talk about more brainy stuff like this. And then Renaissance Periodization YouTube channel, RP Strength. That's where we have most of our stuff coming out, and it's good exercise advice and stuff. Not a whole lot of investing, but investing in the body, which is a good idea for long term
Absolutely.
outcomes.
Health is wealth. Dr. Mike, I appreciate you, man. I had so much fun. Thank you for saying yes to this. You are amazing. Keep it up.
I did. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Mhm.